you guys been?
Did you think we quit?
I thought they quit.
I low-key thought we quit.
I don't know what you were doing.
I don't know. Having a mental health hiatus, I think.
It happens. Hopefully it won't happen often, but it happens.
Yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks.
And yet, we have not much to show for it.
No.
We got brand new cars.
We sure did. We did.
Not because we're like rolling in the dough or anything.
Not even a little bit.
I wish that's why we got brand new cars.
Me too.
Because we had so many patrons
I wish
on Patreon that we were just, quitting our jobs and getting cars and stuff.
That for sure. I was going to say because we won the lottery.
We didn't do that either.
We didn't do either of those things. It was just time to replace cars.
Yes.
And so we did.
We did.
And it's stressful.
It is.
Being a grown-up is stressful.
I don't recommend it.
No. 0 out of 10 do not recommend.
Giving it a terrible Yelp review.
Well, spring break has come to a close.
Yes, it happened, and then it unhappened.
And it's time to go back to work tomorrow. And
I refuse, so I'm not.
Yeah, whatever. Some of us have to go back to work tomorrow.
I go back on Tuesday.
And what else? What else is new? We got some cats fixed.
They were broken.
Yeah.
So we fixed them.
Yeah. They were going to have babies if we didn't.
Yeah. Fixed that.
We sure fixed that problem. Making 0 headway on Housebreaking Pig.
Yeah, the dog is still not housebroken, and I don't know how to fix it. I don't really believe in the you can't teach an old dog new tricks thing, but, she's 13.
And blind. And partially deaf.
And just lost her brother, so...
Yeah.
I don't know how to go about getting her to do the correct thing.
Yep.
It's been an adjustment, though.
It sure has for all of us. Well, it got hot again.
It did get hot again. We're currently in my room with the fan on. Hopefully it's not too obnoxious. Sarah has her air conditioner turned on. I'm just too lazy to deal with mine.
Yep. And I don't know. I guess that's all.
That's all. We're boring even when we're gone for a significant amount of time.
I know. I don't even remember the last time we recorded.
Me neither. But...
I think it was this month sometime.
Yeah, maybe.
I just don't remember when. Well, I've got a story for you.
Are you sure?
Good grief. This I thought was going to be easy peasy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had writer's block halfway through it.
That's how I feel every single time I try to write a story.
And then I couldn't make myself work on it. And then, I don't know, man. But here I am. I don't know if it's twisted or mysterious.
No?
It's a story, though, so we'll see.
Just wrote a story about something?
Yeah, once upon a time. Yeah, so, anyway, we're going to talk about cruise ships today.
Right off the bat, that doesn't sound twisted or mysterious.
Sure doesn't. No. I don't know how you feel about cruises. How do you feel about cruises?
I don't like...
Well, you don't like open bodies of water.
Open bodies of water, so...
But, I mean, if you think about it, a cruise ship is like a giant, city on a boat.
A giant city that can sink.
That's true. That's true.
When I'm on a regular, piece of land, I don't generally have this fear or even the knowledge that it might sink.
That's true.
And so, I'm not a big fan of boats because they have to be on open bodies of water, and I don't do open bodies of water. It's also why I don't fly internationally.
I don't have that same fear that you do. I think my resistance to a cruise, because I've always been intrigued by a cruise, because I feel like it meets a lot of criteria that I enjoy. One, you're on water, and I love water. Two, you don't really have to go anywhere to do anything, because everything's basically at your hotel that's on this boat. And also, you're going around and hitting these, like, all of these ports, like, these places that you've never been before, probably. And so you're getting to visit new places, like, every day or every couple of days or whatever. And so, theoretically, I think I like a cruise. But then you hear all these horror stories about people getting, like, norovirus and stuff.
Yeah.
And I have a very severe phobia of barfing. And so that alone would keep me from going on a cruise. Not even necessarily, like, the fear of sinking or anything, or hurricanes or whatever. Like, I think it would really be, I would be so afraid of catching a barf germ.
Yeah.
Two things in this world I try to avoid at all costs: tornadoes and barf germs.
You also hear about people getting murdered on cruises, though.
That's true. Yeah, or like falling overboard and getting eaten by sharks. Man. Cruises, maybe not for me.
Maybe not.
Well, today we're going to talk about the Costa Concordia, a specific cruise ship.
Okay.
You ever heard of this one?
I mean, I don't know a lot of cruise ships.
It's crazy. I thought you were a connoisseur
I'm
of cruise
not.
ship stories.
My knowledge of cruise ships is severely lacking.
I'm embarrassed.
I know.
Well, this was built as, like, the flagship for Costa Cruises, which is an Italian subsidiary of Carnival Cruises.
Okay.
It costed?
It cost?
I guess cost. I literally wrote costed.
I'm pretty sure it's just cost.
Well, it doesn't have a red line underneath it. It was about $500,000 to build this guy. Which is $500,000 in case you didn't catch that.
I don't study numbers.
It was, no, it was 951 feet long. Farron's dying again. Why is your pump being so rude? I was trying to tell you something very important.
I know.
It was 951 feet long, which, because literally every other thing that I watched or listened to put this in sports terms, it was a football field, like an American football field, is 360 feet. So this was like 2.5 football fields. So
I thought maybe they were going to pull a NASA and measure it in, like,
flamingos. Giraffes. Yeah. No, that would be funner, though. But I think we've all been to at least one football game, so we can kind of gauge. And we've been on football fields. We've marched on them because we're dorks.
We're losers.
So anyway, 2.5 football fields. It weighed over 114,000 tons.
How do you weigh the individual parts, or?
Bro, I don't know. They put it on a scale.
Like, how do you weigh a cruise ship?
They put it on a scale. I don't know. I didn't even bother to wonder that question.
Like,
I don't
they
know.
added up how much all the stuff that they made it weighed, and then they're like, this is how much it weighs, or
Maybe.
do they have a special way of
Or it's like,
weighing cruise ships?
they like picked it up with a crane and did like the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the thing called?
A scale.
It's called a scale.
Yeah. It's literally a scale.
It's literally called a scale.
In any form, it's called a scale.
And they put a bunch of stuff in the other, like, tray of the scale.
Like giraffes and flamingos.
Uh-huh, yeah. Elephants.
Yeah.
How many elephants does this guy weigh?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a fun question.
Yeah.
Okay. Its capacity was for 3,780 passengers.
Did they test that out?
Well, yes, because that was for that, I guess, like based on like how many cabins they had and like the capacity for each cabin. The actual capacity for the ship was like, I don't know, 4,200 or something, because they also had all of like the crew that was on the ship. I think, let me see. I think later I have on here somewhere how many people were on the ship. Maybe I didn't. Okay, never mind. There were 17 decks of the ship. 8 of them were just cabins. There were 1,500 total cabins. So the deck started 200 feet above the waterline.
Yeah.
And this equated to, from like the waterline to the top deck, like a 16 to 20 story building.
Well,
isn't that crazy?
Well, I was literally just about to say 2 things I hate: heights and open bodies of water.
Right. And 4,000 people.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that like the downside would be all of the people in the one enclosed space.
Yeah.
That was
so yeah, I just really don't think the cruise for me.
What if you went on the cruise where Mickey Dolenz sings?
You know, I was just thinking about that.
The old man, the old like 60s cruise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there would not be 4,000 people on that cruise.
Maybe not. You don't think Mickey can bring 4,000 people to a cruise?
Not at one time, I don't think so.
Maybe if he had the rest of the monkeys.
Maybe.
Maybe if Davy was there.
Maybe.
Davy could bring 4,000 people.
Just a little twinkle in his eye.
That's right. He's my real dad, by the way. I don't care what mom says. Okay, so anyway, yeah, this is like a 16 to 20 story building floating on the ocean.
Gross.
It was twice as big as the Titanic. Alright, so the amenities. There were 13 bars, 5 restaurants, 4 swimming pools. One of the swimming pools had like an outdoor movie theater.
Mm-hmm.
A multi-deck movie theater, like separate from that. A casino, a Formula One driving simulator.
Because everyone needs that.
I mean, I just want to go to the one at Disneyland. That's the cars driving thingy.
Right?
That's not a simulator. You're in an actual car.
Yeah. You're literally racing.
Also,
literally.
I'm worried that by the time we go back to Disneyland, it will be gone.
I know. So maybe we should just go.
Maybe we should just go.
With all of our Patreon money.
All of it. Yeah. Alright, and a multi-level spa. So...
You really just need one level of spa.
No, you don't need multi-levels? Okay, whatever. The maiden voyage was July 14th, 2006. So this was a hot minute ago.
Just a couple of years ago.
Literally 20 years ago.
Just a couple.
Just a couple.
Just...
You were a fresh-faced, recent graduate of high school. Yeah, you were 20 years old.
I know. I know how math works.
Do you?
I don't study numbers.
I was going to say, you do study numbers. You're a liar.
No, I don't study numbers. But I do know how my aging works.
Oh, okay, great. Okay. So for everybody listening, if Erin was 20 years ago, how old does that make her today?
612.
Erin does not study numbers. Okay, christening a ship. Quick deep dive.
Smacking a wine bottle on them or a champagne bottle.
Smart. My question was, do you know how ships are christened?
Yeah, you smack a champagne bottle on it.
Smack it on its bing bong.
Mm-hmm.
What is that from?
Spin City?
Oh, maybe. Okay. Okay, so...
It's David Spade.
Oh, you're right. It is David Spade. You're right. I bet it is Spin City. So anyway, yes, a champagne bottle is smashed on the hull of the ship to announce the name of the ship. There is a superstition behind it, of course, because I don't know why else we would do this. to appease the sea gods to ensure safe passage and bring good luck to the vessel and crew. The bottle must break. If not, the sea rejects the vessel. Because I guess it's like pouring one out for the sea gods.
I was just wondering why you wouldn't just pour one out for the sea gods. Why do you have to put glass in the ocean?
Well, I've got some more information for you, so slow your roll. A woman typically does the blessing and is then considered the guardian of the ship. I feel like that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
The christening, if it is
heavy load,
done on literally 114,000 tons.
Many elephants worth of.
So many elephants.
Wait, does an elephant weigh like a ton?
Look, Google it.
Well, I
was literally about to say I didn't bring my Googleator while I'm looking at my iPad.
You're reading your notes
off of my. What did that? That council person Google machine? That was so dorky.
Or was it the texting machine?
Oh, it was a texting machine. And didn't he say it on like Jimmy Kimmel? It was so stupid.
I'm pretty sure it was Jimmy Kimmel.
Embarrassing.
Okay. How much does an elephant weigh? This is an approximation because all elephants are different.
What?
It varies significantly by species and gender.
Oh, good grief. Just tell me.
Between 2 and 7 tons, so it varies greatly.
So, like, 50,000 elephants.
Okay. You guys needed to know that.
It was
It's a heavy weight.
It was heavy.
It's a heavy burden on a person.
Yeah.
To be the guardian of a ship.
So, if you do the christening on Monday, Thursday, or Friday, it's considered unlucky. Okay, so don't do that. And then I went down a little rabbit hole about this, and according to BBC, anyway, Queen Victoria was maybe the first person to smash a champagne bottle on the hull of a ship, because before that it had been wine. So maybe she did not have any wine with her that day, so she used champagne.
So, will this champagne work?
It's sparkling wine.
From the Champagne region of France.
You're so smart.
I know.
In 15th century England, a representative of the king would drink wine from a goblet, sprinkle some wine on the deck, and then throw the goblet overboard. But then so many ships were being built that throwing a bunch of silver goblets overboard got expensive. Other liquids have also been used, such as whiskey and brandy. Aren't whiskey and brandy the same thing?
Look, I don't have a huge knowledge of hard liquor.
Of liqueur.
I'm definitely not a liquor connoisseur, but
I thought you're a connoisseur of all things.
We're not the only ones that want to know this question.
Was it number one?
Yes. No, brandy is not a whiskey. While both are aged distilled spirits with similar alcohol content, they have entirely different ingredients.
Oh, okay. Whiskey's the same as something. I don't know. I don't care that much. Scotch, maybe. Okay.
I think Scotch is just a type of whiskey.
Perhaps. Okay. Except you drink whiskey if you're a redneck, and you drink Scotch if you're like a fancy person. Yes. Okay. Anyway, so whiskey and brandy have also been used during Prohibition, because we're such dorks in this country. Water was used.
How lame. Couldn't even use some juice.
Like some apple juice. I was thinking the sea was probably like, I'm literally made
of water.
I wanted wine, but
this is embarrassing.
Thanks, I guess. However, ship blessings have always been a thing. Babylonians would sacrifice oxen, and then the Vikings went one step crazier, and they would sacrifice an enslaved person. Let's see. So, back to the Costa Concordia. She was christened on July 7th, 2006. I looked it up, and this was a Friday.
Uh-oh.
Which is apparently a no-no.
Uh-oh.
Red flag number 1.
Don't make noise. Not you.
Oh.
I opened an app and I was afraid it was going to start making noise.
He's like, freeze. Okay. I thought you heard something.
No. I think I would have worded it differently if I had heard something. I mean, I can't guarantee you, but
Don't make noise.
Don't make noise. Might not have been my first choice.
It would have been mine. Okay. So also, with these giant ships, rather than someone smashing the bottle against the hull, they tie the champagne bottle to a rope and drop it and then let it swing and smash against the hull. Well, guess what? This one didn't break.
Uh-oh.
Red flag number 2. So, are you starting to sense that perhaps something might go wrong in the story?
Perhaps.
Perhaps. So our story takes place on Friday, July 13th, 2012.
That's not ominous at all.
Maybe red flag number 3, which is almost 6 years to the date after its maiden voyage. It's also it was not exactly, hold on, brains.
You can do it.
It was 100 years after the Titanic, just not the same month. Because I think the Titanic sunk in like April or something, maybe. So it was like months off, but it was 100 years.
Yeah.
All right. So at this time, the ship was captained by Francesco Schettino, a 52-year-old who had been born into a seafaring family. He attended a nautical institute in Italy and worked for a ferry company, and he was hired by Costa Cruises in 2002 as a security officer and was promoted to second in command, and in 2006 was promoted to captain and given command of the Costa Concordia. He had 2 incidents under his belt at this point in time. The first was from 2008 when the Costa Concordia was damaged after high winds pushed it against a dock. There was damage to the bow?
Yes.
Bow.
Bow.
Okay. And then there were no injuries on that one. And so it wasn't really his fault. He just happened to be in charge of the boat at the time.
Likely story.
Right. The second incident occurred in 2010 while he was captaining another ship called the Costa Atlantica. This time, he was accused of entering a German port at excessive speed and maybe damaging another Carnival ship. At the time, he claimed that he didn't know he was speeding because he didn't know the speed limit. And I will tell you that this is the first time I ever considered that there was a speed limit for boats.
Like, there's not, like, signs. Like, how do you know what, like, can you get a ticket for driving the wrong speed limit in the water? And, like, say I got a boat.
Okay, let's say you got a boat.
And I'm just out there cruising.
Uh-huh.
Can I get a ticket for going over the speed limit? Like, how do I know what the speed limit is?
I want to say that, like, if you're just out over open water, probably not. There probably isn't some kind of speed limit there. But I bet when you're entering a port, it's important, like, not to go fast because you're in with a bunch of other ships and things and boats. But literally never considered it before hearing this information. But also, shouldn't the captain of a ginormous cruise ship know the speed limit?
You would think, especially if it's something he does, often.
Yeah.
It's not his first day on the job.
Yeah, no, okay. So, back to Friday, July 13th, 2012. What are you looking at?
She, like, burrowed into that stuff over there and hasn't come back.
Oh, Veronica. She's a wild child.
She's never done this before.
She saves her fun for podcast time.
I guess. It's when she likes to experiment.
She wants to make sure everybody hears about her adventures.
So, Mom, tell them that I'm doing this.
Don't worry, we did.
We told them, you better reemerge at some point, so I have to, like, go spelunking for you.
Right. She loves to spelunk, though, so there's that. Okay, 7 p.m. The ship embarked on a 7-day cruise around the Mediterranean, sailing out from Civitavecchia near Rome. This was a regular trip that the ship sailed. It took a circuitous route, stopping to port at Savona, Marseille, Barcelona, Palma de Mallorca, Cagliari, and Palermo. I wrote myself some little pronunciations
Yeah, I was
on
gonna
there.
say.
Check me out. Actually, it's just because I'm Italian. Um, the ship had sailed this route many, many times. Here we go. There were 4,229 people on board, about 1,000 of them being crew members. There were about 60 different countries represented on this cruise. Fun fact, an Italian reality show called Professione Lookmaker. It just sounds so stupid.
Okay.
Google tells us that this is a show about image consulting, styling, and beauty transformations.
Oh.
And so there were about 200 hairdressers who were contestants for the show on board.
Okay.
The ship was set on course for Savona, which was about 250 miles away. And after the ship set sail, according to Vanity Fair, Captain Schettino went to dinner and told his crew to alert him when they were 5 miles away from Giglio Island. This is a small island about 45 miles northwest of Civitavecchia. Giglio Island is about 11 miles off the coast of Tuscany. It's a teeny tiny little guy, only 8 square miles, and has a population between 1,200 and 1,500 people. This evening, I think they said there were only like 900 people on the island because it was wintertime. When Captain Schettino was alerted around 9 p.m., he went back to the bridge, and the official route for the ship was to sail between Giglio Island and the Tuscan coast. However, ships sometimes do this, like not necessarily authorized deviation from the regularly scheduled route, called a sail-by or a sail-by salute. I watched this 2-part documentary on Prime, and they were saying that this was something that you wouldn't find on the cruise brochure, but it's sometimes considered like an added bonus. So essentially, a sail-by takes the ship closer to shore, and then they light up the ship and put on a show and honk the horn, and it's kind of just like a spectacle for the people on shore. At 9:15 p.m., Captain Schettino orders the crew to divert from their planned route to do a sail-by of Giglio Island. And there's an article in Vanity Fair called Another Night to Remember that says that this was at the behest of the ship's maitre d', who was from the island. It was also widely reported that Schettino also wanted to salute a former captain named Mario Palumbo, who was his mentor, who was on the island. And this ship, with this captain, had performed the sail-by of Giglio Island on previous occasions. On the Stuff You Should Know podcast, they said that after the last one, that was just like a week or so before, this Captain Schettino had ordered his crew to start working on a sail-by plan that would take them even closer to the island. However, what comes next makes me think that perhaps this new route wasn't ready to put into action, or maybe needed some more planning. You know?
Yeah.
So,
didn't funk it out real good.
No, not really. Ugh, my nose is just so bad. So, Antonello Tevoli, the maitre d', called Mario Palumbo to let him know that they were doing the sail-by. But Palumbo said that he wasn't even on the island that night. He was, like, at his winter home, like, on the actual country of Italy.
Yeah.
On the boot.
The mainland.
That's the word. He was in the boot. Okay. So back to the article in Vanity Fair. In that article, Schettino then took the phone to talk to Palumbo, and according to court documents, Palumbo testified that he was surprised that Schettino got on the phone because he hadn't spoken with him for like 7 years. That Schettino hadn't even called to congratulate him on his retirement.
Rude.
You know, he seemed a little salty about it.
Like the sea.
Ooh, maybe because he spent so much time on the sea. And so now he's just like made of salts. The purpose of the call seemed to be Schettino wanting information on the depth of the area surrounding the coast of Giglio, because he was wanting to pass the island at only about 0.4 nautical miles, which works out to like a whole 800 yards from the coast. The scheduled route, 6 miles off the coast. So this was maybe a little closer.
Just a little.
Yeah. Palumbo testified that he told Schettino that the seabeds were fine, but that it was winter, and so there was hardly anyone on the island, and there was no reason to get that close because there was no one to impress. He told him just to do a quick greeting with a honk. In his testimony, he says, quote, "I want to clarify that I said verbatim, say hi and stay away." And then the phone went dead. So just to give all the sides, there are various stories about how that phone call went. Some stories say that Palumbo told Schettino that his plan was okay. Some say that he didn't even get the chance to ask him before the phone went dead, but Palumbo's court testimony says that he told him not to do it. So according to the recordings from the ship, at 9:34 p.m., Schettino told the helmsman, Jacob Rusli-Bin, to turn the rudder to manual mode, and then for some genius reason decides to grab some binoculars and try to navigate closer to the island by sight. In court, he explained, quote, "I was navigating by sight because I knew the depths well, and I had done this maneuver 3 or 4 times. So back up, pal, because if you knew the depths well, why did you need to call?
Why were you calling someone to ask about the depths?
Right. Also, you can't see under the water with your eyeballs when you're several stories above the waterline, and it's nighttime. Eyeballing this does not sound right, but I'm not a ship captain, so. So next, at 9:40 p.m., he also, I know this was 2006, right, is what I told you, but there were, like, radars and things on boats. Like, even if it's, like, the green thing that's like, boop, bloop, boop. Yeah. So, I don't know. That seems safer. I don't know. That's just me. At 9:40 p.m., he tells Jacob to increase the ship's speed. Okay. I know a lot of things, but if you say the word knots to me, I'm not going to have the vaguest idea what you're talking about. Or what the translation is, rather.
Okay, so I say, like, I know what a knot
I know what a knot is, I just don't know what the translation is.
But I couldn't tell you what it equates to.
So I've converted the speeds to miles per hour. So the speed increase was from 3.5 miles per hour to 18 miles per hour. And I know this may come as a shock to you, but I'm not really an expert on boats.
No?
Or driving boats.
No?
Not even riding on boats. I know.
Disappointing.
However, I feel like if you're in a 114,000 ton ship that is the length of almost 3 football fields, and you're trying to eyeball your way dangerously close to shore in the dark, perhaps increasing your speed is a terrible idea.
Doesn't sound like the smartest thing to do.
No, but that's just my 2 cents. Again, I am not an expert. At the same time, he told Jacob to turn the ship to 310 degrees. So a lot of stories covering this impending disaster, spoiler alert, blame the disaster on a language barrier. So I did a Goog. And it seems that ships have a language that is supposed to be common between all the crew members to ensure that communication is clear, for safety reasons. The International Maritime Organization has mandated that Maritime English is the official international language for maritime communication. And really all Maritime English means, from what I understood, is that everyone uses the same terms like port for left and starboard for right, and mayday and bow? Yes, and stern. I don't know why that's confusing me today. Just common boat language, so that if they're speaking to each other in the ship or calling ship to shore, everyone understands the what and the where. However, some international vessels will have a work language for individual ships. So Costa Cruises is Italian. Basically, this meant that all of the crew should be fluent in Italian. And as far as I could find, Jacob was Indonesian and was fluent in Italian. However, Schettino was giving the commands in English, which Jacob was not fluent in. So when he gave Jacob the command to now turn the ship to 325 degrees, Jacob asks, 315? And another officer on the ship tells him, no, 335, which wasn't even the original number. And then Jacob asks, 340? And Schettino tells him, no, 350, otherwise we'll end up on the rocks. It's like giving directions to a teenager. But they're already closer to the island than they meant to be. And Schettino sees rocks ahead. He, sees the water, breaking over the rocks. So he tells Jacob to turn to 350, but the ship wasn't turning fast enough and the boat was still going way too fast. They're passing a rock, and Schettino tells Jacob to turn 10 degrees to the left, but Jacob turns to the right and they go the wrong direction for like 8 seconds. And then he took a hard right when he realized took a hard left when he realized his error. The second deck officer yelled that they're going to hit the rocks, and sure enough, with a loud crash, the ship hit the rocks and the rear left side of the boat, or with the rear left side of the boat, and tore a 174-foot long gash into the hull of the ship.
That's probably not good.
It probably isn't. The rocks they hit were part of a reef system known as Le Scole, which translates to the rocks. The impact was such that it tore an 80-ton boulder off of the seabed that became embedded in the hull of the ship. And I think it was on the Stuff You Should Know podcast said that the boulder's now used as a memorial.
Yeah.
So guess what happens when a 174-foot long gash is torn into the hull of a ship?
Oh, like not good things.
No, thousands of tons of water just poured right on in. And in less than 30 seconds, all of the engines had flooded and failed and caused a blackout throughout the ship. And naturally, people started panicking. So as far as the passengers' awareness of what was going on, stories differ a bit. They definitely noticed when all the lights went out, because it's 9:45 p.m. The backup emergency lights did come on within a few minutes. The Vanity Fair article I read has accounts from passengers saying that they heard and felt the impact and immediately started panicking. I watched another documentary on YouTube where I'll make sure to link all of those after when we post this, but because I can't remember what the title of this one was called, but passengers stated that the ship kind of leaned sideways and plates and food started sliding around the dining room. Imagine like you're going to take a bite and you like go to stab your steak and then your plate just underneath you.
Yeah.
Also, it kind of reminded me of just like a cartoon. Like, you're not participating in my...
Sorry, I was Googling a word.
Moments over.
But yes.
Yes. Okay, so anyway, the pianist who was performing said that the impact was so significant that it tore his piano off of like the safety latches that had it mounted to the floor. People had fallen down. I think it was this pianist said that people were like holding teeth in their hands because they had like knocked their face on things. And so guess what Captain Schettino does?
The abandoned ship.
Not yet. Instead of saying, hey, sorry, we hit some rocks, he says, don't worry, it's just an electrical issue and we've got it under control. And so, you know how when you board the plane and the flight attendants tell you where the oxygen masks are and what to do in case of emergency? Well, they do something similar on cruises, and during this they tell passengers where the life vests can be found, where their designated areas to meet up in case of emergency are, that are called muster stations. Did you know that?
No. I do know that a ship leaning is called listing, though.
That is the word, and I do use that word several times in the course of this story. I know. Is that what you were looking at?
I was making sure that I knew what it meant.
Yeah, that is what it is, listing. So I guess, have you ever heard the phrase pass muster?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought it was like a, not a nautical term, but maybe like a military term. But apparently it's a nautical term. So anyway, the place where you go in case of emergency on a ship is called your muster station.
Okay.
However, they had not performed this yet. As you know, I have never been on a cruise, but according to the podcasts who have been on a cruise that I listen to, today cruises do this on like day one, like hour one. And I think somebody said that Disney does it before they even leave the dock. And possibly because of this situation here. However, I think that at the time that this happened, it just had to have been done in the first 24 hours. So the emergency protocol hadn't even been taught to people yet. There is footage of passengers putting on their life vests and going to these designated places. Maybe they're cruise veterans. Maybe they knew what deck the lifeboats were on already. Maybe they were just following other people. I did see on Google that the number to your muster station is on your cabin door. But it seemed like they were doing this because clearly something wasn't right. And when people went to their muster stations, their designated places, crew members told them that nothing was wrong and to go back to their cabins. And there's footage of this online. I watched a TikTok that was like a video from someone's cell phone.
Yeah.
Where a crew member is telling people at this particular muster station that everything was fine. It's just a blackout. They had it under control. Now please go back to your cabin. So in the meantime, below deck, the crew is racing around trying to close watertight doors, which, by the way, were already supposed to be closed, but had been left open because it was so tedious to open and close them that sometimes the crew would leave them open just because it helped, like, minimize workflow. The crew tried to manually reboot the emergency power system, but could not. And because they had lost their entire electrical system, the pumps that were supposed to be pumping the flooded water out weren't working, and communications were knocked out. There was, I guess, like the backup batteries or whatever. That's what got the lights and the communications back up, but that was it. And as far as the flooding and the engines and everything major, there wasn't really anything they could do about that. And on the documentary I mentioned that I'd watched on Prime, they talked about that these compartments in the hull of the ship can take on a certain amount of flooding. And I guess if 2 of them are flooded, the ship will still mostly be all right. But in no time at all, 3 of the compartments flooded, and the ship started to list to the left. And if 4 are flooded, the ship sinks. And instead of calling the Coast Guard, Captain Schettino calls Costa Cruise's crisis coordinator, who apparently told him to tell people that it was a blackout.
That doesn't seem great.
No, it doesn't. So the person he spoke with at Costa was Roberto Ferrarini, who said that he was told by Captain Schettino that only 1 compartment was flooded, the one with the electrical propulsion motors, and that the ship's buoyancy had not been compromised. He also remembers that Schettino seemed quite calm on the phone, and they spoke a few more times between 10 and 10:30. And this is when he finally admitted to Ferrarini that a second compartment was flooded. But remember, like, 3 compartments now are flooded, so he's not really telling the truth, which maybe is why this is considered a crime. Maybe a true crime. So now that their engines are all knocked out, the ship is officially adrift. And I think at this point they were all of about like 450 feet off the coast. And the ship started heading out to open water, which would have made this an even worse disaster. However, probably due to wind and the way the rudders were positioned when the engines failed, the ship turned around and headed back towards the island, like blew back towards the island. Captain Schettino said that this was his skill at being able to steer the ship. I do not know if that is true or not, because I don't know if he was able to steer the ship at this point.
Yeah.
I don't think he had like a big wooden wheel. But I don't know, maybe they do.
Maybe they have a backup wheel.
Maybe. So now, because the ship is listing, again, you've got plates sliding all over the place. People are falling down. People are panicking. People on the boat start calling people on shore and telling them what's going on. And then the residents of the island see what's going on because the boat's like basically on their shore. And they call police. And remember I told you that Captain Schettino did not call the Coast Guard? Well, at 10:12, the Coast Guard radioed the Concordia and asked, is there a problem? Because we've been notified by the local police about these phone calls. And the officers on the Concordia tell the Coast Guard that it's just an electrical blackout. And so the Coast Guard says, but I've heard plates are falling off the dinner tables. Why would that be? Why would passengers have been ordered to put on life jackets? And Captain Schettino orders the navigation officer, Simone Canessa, to tell the Coast Guard, no, it's just a blackout and it will be resolved shortly. And to be perfectly clear, Schettino and everyone else on the bridge knows that the ship is taking on like massive amounts of water. He knows that the engines have failed and that the ship is sinking. The Coast Guard radioed a little while later asking for an update, and at this point, the officers on the Concordia admit that they have some water coming in. No one is injured, and can you please send one tugboat?
For 4,000 people.
Yeah. And this is definitely where people start really putting the blame for this tragedy on Captain Schettino, because him lying to the Coast Guard about the severity of the situation delayed rescue workers and delayed the evacuation of the ship. At 10:28, the Coast Guard basically does this like all call asking for available ships in the area to head to Giglio. So the ship is adrift, heading back towards the island. About an hour after the initial impact, the Concordia finally came to rest on an underwater cliff where it now started to list to the right or starboard. So it's like leaning this way, and now it's leaning this way. So imagine you finally started getting your bearings with the ship leaning one side, and now it flips over to the other side. And so now everything starts falling around again, sliding to the other side. Another issue was that, again, because they hadn't been given their safety training yet, the people on the board didn't know which muster station to report to. And so they were just showing up at various lifeboats and then being told that they had to go to areas clear on the other side of the ship. And remember, this is like a gigantic ship. Mm-hmm. Like, it's not just like walking a couple of steps to the other side. Yeah. I mean, there's like hallways and elevators and stairs and all kinds of things going from one side to the other. Even though workers, officers, whatever you call them, on the ship had not yet started helping people evacuate, the people on the ship decided it was time to start deploying the lifeboats.
Well, we're getting off. Thank you.
And when, like, the officers did finally come around to start helping people deploy the lifeboats, even they didn't seem to know what to do. There was a retired sea captain on the ship who started helping people figure out how to work the lifeboats. Mm-hmm. And these aren't, like, life rafts like I was thinking of. These are, like, boats that hold, like, 100 people or something. Yeah. Like, they're pretty significant. And if you look at pictures of the ship, there's, like, several along one side and then back along the other side, and there's plenty to be able to evacuate everybody on the ship. The call to abandon ship was finally given at 10:58, so this was over an hour after the initial impact. At this point, though, the ship was leaning over so far that it became impossible to lower the boats. The ship eventually ended up leaning at a 70-degree angle, so like almost on its side. Yeah. The starboard side, on that side, you have boats that are almost completely underwater because it's leaning so far over to that side. On the port side, which was the side that was like basically on top of the boat now, there was no way to engage the boats because they just kept like bumping up against the side of the thing because you couldn't like lower them straight down into the water because they were like almost on top of the boat at this point. Things were so scary, though, on the boat that they were definitely still trying to deploy these boats. And the people would kind of, like, push themselves away from the ship so that the lifeboat could fall. And then it would bang back up against the ship, and then they'd push themselves back over so it could drop a little while later. And you can watch all of this footage because, I mean, people had cell phone cameras at this point in time. Yeah. And so, like, you could hear the sound of, like, the lifeboats, like, banging back up against the ship, and, like, all of these people waiting, and, you know, people are screaming and crying and looking for other people on, like, that they were on the boat with. The people who were on the wrong side of the ship for their muster stations were now basically having to navigate the ship on its side to get to the other part of the ship. So, like, imagine, like, if you're down here, you're having to, like, go up to get to the other side of the ship. It was chaos.
I would imagine.
Yeah. And people were waiting on lifeboats that it was, like, the people who were waiting for lifeboats said it was like every man for himself. People were ripping life jackets away from each other, fighting to get onto boats. It was not the best show of humanity.
No.
People also started jumping into the water with the reasoning that they weren't that far from shore. However, it was January, right? February, January. When did I say this?
I don't remember what month you said it was.
You know what? I think I said it was July.
I thought so.
I was wrong. It's in...
Because then you said January or February, and I was like, maybe I was wrong. Maybe she said another date later on.
What in the world? I did say that. Wow. And I didn't even catch that, and I was reading over this earlier, because... January 13th, not July 13th.
Okay.
Please excuse my earlier error. Okay. So, anyway, it's January.
Yeah. Little different than July.
Quite different. I wonder where I got July from when I wrote that earlier. Anyway, it's January 13th. It's still Friday the 13th, though, by the way. Okay, so... With the water as cold as it was, a person couldn't survive more than an hour. And also one thing people didn't think about was the suction of the ship around the boat. Like when they jumped into the water.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the first death that ended up being, recorded for this disaster was somebody who did die of hypothermia in the water. Another crazy thing that I heard, something I wouldn't have even thought about, was that the ship had a mortuary.
Yeah.
And there were coffins floating in the water where people had used them as flotation devices because, they didn't have anything else. On Giglio, the police called Mario Pellegrini, who was the deputy mayor, and told him that there was a ship in trouble and he needed to get down there. So the first lifeboats reached the shore of Giglio right after 11. Pellegrini ordered the hotels, churches, schools opened so that these people had somewhere to go inside.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, the island at its peak only has 1,500 residents, and there's 4,000 people on this boat.
Yeah.
The residents of Giglio really came together, though, and they got all of the blankets and sweaters and things that they could find to give to these people who are wet and cold and scared. Also, they don't have anything. All they have are, the clothes that they were wearing on the ship when this happened. Mm-hmm. And then Pellegrini really just became the hero of the day because he jumped on one of the lifeboats and headed back to the Concordia.
Yeah.
There was a rope ladder hanging off a lower deck, and he climbed on board and started looking for the captain and anyone else who was in charge. No one seemed to know where any of the officers were. He said he looked for 20 minutes and couldn't find anyone, so he just started helping people get onto lifeboats.
Mm-hmm.
A helicopter showed up with a doctor, a paramedic, and rescue swimmers. The Vanity Fair article reported that by 12:15, everyone on the starboard side of the ship, the part that was closest to the water, had evacuated either by lifeboat, jumping into the water, or trying to make it back to the port side. Pellegrini said he ran over to the port side and he found over 500 people still on the ship. And then the ship started to roll. And before this, it had been about 45 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when it fell over to the 70 degrees that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
And so at the water level in the ship started to rise. And when the ship rolled, now we have a situation where the floor has now become the wall, and even worse, the hulls have now become shafts that people in the middle of the ship have fallen into.
Mm-hmm.
People were sucked into elevator shafts filling with water, and this was thought to be the deadliest moment of the night, and at least 15 people drowned. Pellegrini found some people at the bottom of one of these hallways turned shafts where the water level was rising, and he and the ship's doctor dropped a rope down and started pulling people out. I think at some point he had found an aluminum ladder, just a regular ladder, that he was having people cross spaces on horizontally, like how you see on Mount Everest.
Mm-hmm.
And you might be wondering about our friend Captain Schettino. Where might he be? I'll tell you. He's no longer on the ship.
I didn't think so.
So at 12:15, Captain Schettino ran back to his cabin, got some luggage, changed his clothes, and then got on a lifeboat and left.
Oh.
So there's a pretty famous video of a man who looks remarkably like Captain Schettino in a black suit and coat, waiting patiently for a lifeboat. Schettino claims this is not him. However, at 12:42, Captain Schettino's cell rang, and it was the Coast Guard supervisor named Gregorio DeFalco, who becomes one of the main characters of the story. DeFalco's like, "What you doing?" And this,
Hey.
yeah. So he did record the call, and Schettino tells him, "We've abandoned ship." And DeFalco says, "You abandoned ship." Like, I beg your pardon.
Yeah.
And Schettino goes, "I did not abandon the ship, but we were thrown into the water." So this dummy claims that he was assisting with the evacuation, which if you see this video and you think that it is him, he is not assisting in anything. He is standing there waiting for a boat. He was assisting with the evacuation.
Nice weather we're having.
Exactly. That he was helping people into the lifeboats when he tripped and fell into the lifeboat. But guess what? All of his officers happened to be on this boat with him as well. And instead of going into the harbor, their lifeboat took them over by the cliffs of Giglio. Which I was like, didn't it take them to the same place everybody else was? Because they were hiding, I think. So this is where the police chief found him. So Chief Roberto Galli said that he noticed lights twinkling on the rocks at Point Cabinara and thought they had to be life preservers. So he went over there, which was no easy feat from land, and found 110 survivors from the ship. They were all wet and cold, so he called for a bus and started hauling people up the cliff to get onto this bus to take them back to where everybody else is. Chief Galli said he was shocked to find that he was face to face with Captain Schettino, who was dry, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And Galli was like, "OMG, let me give you a ride back to port so you can head back to the ship." And Schettino was like, "Actually, I'm coordinating the evacuation from here." Okay, friend.
They told me I don't need to be on the ship.
Yeah. So Galli left, and I think at some point while I was watching the Prime documentary on this, that this police chief guy was saying that Schettino kept saying something like, "The rocks, they weren't there, they weren't on the map, they've never been there before." And he was just like, "What are you talking about? Like, these are famous rocks.
Yeah.
Like, everybody knows that they're there.
Everybody knows these rocks."
These are the famousest rocks in all of Italy, actually, so. Okay, so Galli was just like, "Whatever, I have a job to do," so he left him there. DeFalco, the Coast Guard guy, calls Schettino again at 1:46 a.m. And all of this is recorded, and it's my favorite thing in the whole world. And he says, quote, "Schettino, listen, Schettino, there are people trapped on board. Now you go with your boat under the prow on the starboard side. There's a rope ladder. You go up that ladder, get on that ship, and tell me how many people are still on board and what they need. Is that clear? You need to tell me if there are children, women, or people in need of assistance, and tell me the exact number of each of these categories. Is that clear? Listen, Schettino, you may have saved yourself from the sea, but I'm going to make you pay for this. Get the fuck on board." And that actually became such a famous phrase that people in Italy started wearing it on t-shirts. So Schettino tells DeFalco that he's there with the rescue boats and trying to coordinate the rescue from there and isn't going anywhere. And DeFalco is like, "Bro, when you declare abandoned ship, that makes me in charge now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm ordering you to get back on the ship." And he tells them, "There are already bodies."
Yeah.
And Schettino goes, "How many bodies are there?" And I think this is really where DeFalco loses it, because he's like, "I don't know. I have heard of one. You are the one who has to tell me how many there are. Christ."
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm not even there.
You tell me how many bodies there are.
Right? This is your ship. And Schettino goes, But do you realize it is dark and we can't see anything? And this is my favorite part. DeFalco tells him, quote, "And so what? You want to go home, Schettino? It is dark and you want to go home? Get on the boat using the rope ladder and tell me what can be done and how many people there are and what their needs are now."
Mm-hmm.
Guess what he didn't do?
He didn't go back on the boat.
He did not. I don't know how. I don't know if it was maybe a ferry, but he did check into a hotel in Porto Santo Stefano the next morning, which is like on the mainland of Italy. The following morning with his luggage, telling the taxi driver that he needed to buy new socks. He needed some dry socks.
Yeah.
I'm so glad he was able to get his belongings off the ship, considering the passengers and crew lost literally everything.
Mm-hmm.
Crew members had cash stored in lockers that was like their pay from the last 6 months.
Yeah.
Everyone's clothes, belongings, all gone. But poor Captain Schettino had wet socks. So the rescue operations were called off at 6:17 a.m. Now that the sun is up, they could see exactly how bad the ship was listing and what it really looked like. And emergency personnel were getting back on board to assess the situation and found a Korean couple on their honeymoon trapped in their cabin. Apparently, they had slept through the initial impact, but woke up when the ship began to tilt, but got trapped in their cabin. They said they had blown the whistles on their life jackets and yelled and banged on things, but no one heard them, so they ate cookies and drank water until they were found. But they were the last survivors that were found on the ship. I'm just like, how did you sleep through that? They had only been on board for like 3 hours.
Very sleepy.
Rescue divers began searching, which was incredibly dangerous because not only could the ship fall at any time, like there's all these obstacles, like knives floating around,
Yeah.
bed sheets they could get tangled in, chandeliers that they were swimming under that could fall at any moment. Sadly, they did find a 5-year-old girl with her father who had drowned. She was the youngest of what turned into 32 casualties from the shipwreck. So, among the casualties was a Hungarian violinist named Sándor Fejér, who had been seen helping children put on life jackets. And the last body recovered wasn't until the ship had been removed and was being dismantled, and it was a waiter named Russell Rebello who had given his life jacket away. And he eventually had been trapped under some furniture that fell. I think there were 2 bodies actually that they found after, like there were 2 that were never accounted for, and when they finally were able to remove the ship from, like to take it to be dismantled, was when they found them.
Yeah.
Captain Francesco Schettino was arrested along with 4 other crew members who were on the bridge at the time of the disaster. Roberto Ferrarini, the crisis coordinator guy, he was also arrested. All of them, except for Captain Schettino, were given plea deals, which kept them from serving any time. However, while Captain Schettino wanted to get in on this plea bargain deal, he was denied that opportunity and was charged with manslaughter, causing a shipwreck, abandoning ship, and lying to authorities. The media gave him a cool new nickname, Captain Coward. I know. It was really, they really put a lot of thought into it. After the call between him and the Coast Guard guy DeFalco were leaked, it was
Captain
pretty
Big Fat Chicken.
right. It was pretty much over for Schettino after they listened to the Coast Guard phone call. Also, it came out that there was one other person on the bridge that night. A 25-year-old Moldovan dancer named Dominika oh my goodness, I meant to look up her name, her last name. Actually, and I think her name is Dominika Simmerton, maybe. She was an unpaid passenger of this cruise who was maybe staying with a certain married Captain Schettino.
Maybe.
Her presence on the bridge that night is attributed to possibly distracting the captain, or maybe he was trying to impress his young girlfriend. But the media loved that angle. Captain Schettino's trial was held in a 1,000-seat theater in Tuscany and lasted 19 months. He was convicted of all charges and sentenced to 16 years in prison in Rome, where he is currently still serving his sentence. He did appeal his conviction, but it was upheld. Some people believe that maybe he was not wrongly convicted, but that maybe he shouldn't have been the only one who got into trouble or as much trouble for what happened that night. Some people think that Costa Cruises should have taken much more blame for what happened, but they were happy to vilify Schettino. I personally think he got what he deserved.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you hear that the captain is supposed to go down with the ship.
Yeah.
And he left, and not only did he leave, but if, like, those videos are true, like, he changed clothes to maybe, like, try to blend in where he wouldn't be seen. He grabbed belongings because he knew what was going on when everybody else didn't really know what was going on. Like, yeah. And it seems to me, and really most everyone else who's covered the story, that he maybe let his pride take over, and it caused a lot of people their lives. And maybe if he had sounded the general alarm sooner, maybe most, if not all of those 32 people would still be alive.
Yeah.
So Costa Cruises basically took zero responsibility for the accident. They maintained that they did not approve of these changes to routes for sailbys, even though it seems like it was a regular thing that people did. However, also, apparently at the time, there was no rule or law saying that a captain had to alert if he was rerouting. So, in that sense, Schettino didn't break a rule, even if it was reckless. The cruise line ended up offering everyone on the ship 11,000 euros plus reimbursement of their travel expenses. I'm sure when you multiply that by 4,000 people, it's a lot, but it just doesn't seem like a lot considering the trauma. Also, if the people accepted the payment, they had to give up their right to sue. And in addition to the payouts, the salvage operation worked out to be like $1.2 billion on a $500,000 ship.
Mm-hmm.
So that alone, I'm sure Costa felt like Schettino cost them $2 billion for this stunt.
Yeah.
Lastly, I just wanted to talk about the salvage operation because it was kind of a big deal too. So first, this was the worst maritime disaster since the Titanic, which, like I said, happened 100 years prior to this, but it was off just a couple of months. It also ended up being the largest, most complex, and costliest maritime evacuation in history. It also was the largest, most complex, and costliest maritime salvage operation in history. So, remember how big the ship was?
Yes.
50,000 elephants or something. 1 million, gazillion, billion, trillion flamingos. Let's see. Giglio Island is a protected national park, but the surrounding sea is part of the Pelagos Sanctuary for Marine Mammals, including dolphins and whales. Additionally, there are these endangered mollusks that live in the area around the island called Nobel pin shells. They can grow up to 3 feet. But I want to show you a picture of them because it was really cool.
Okay.
Let's see. Nobel pin shell. Not pendant. Farron. These things be so silly. They're these big guys. But... And then they've got, like, these pokey things at the end. And the pokey thing is what goes into the water.
Yeah.
But... I can't find the picture I was looking at the other day. But it looked crazy because it, like... They're, like, all, like, lined up like this. And so... It almost looks like a graveyard.
Yeah.
Because they're just, like, all, like, in rows. Let's see. I wonder... See how they are right there. I don't know, they look kind of crazy. Wrong app. Okay. So this giant ship had like 700,000 gallons of fuel on it. Plus it had cleaning products and food and all kinds of things to accommodate 4,000 people for 7 days. The salvage operation had to be a delicate process. They couldn't blow up the ship because then that would just send all of the debris into the water. They considered using this method where they'd use these cables that were almost as strong as diamond to cut the ship into pieces, kind of like, I don't know, like when you slice cheese.
Yeah.
But it was with these big cables that they would put on either side, because that's been used before to cut up ships for salvage.
Or like how you cut clay
Yes.
with the like garrote thing.
Yes, exactly. But they were worried that the stuff in the ship would start leaking out and polluting the environment. And they couldn't just pull it away from the rocks because of the same thing.
Right.
So the first thing that they did was pump all of the fuel out. And then they did this method called parbuckling, which is also how the USS Oklahoma was removed from Pearl Harbor. So essentially, they built these steel platforms that the ship would sit on after they pulled it upright. And there's this documentary that was just about the salvation of the ship on PBS. I watched it on YouTube, but it was called Sunken Ship Rescue. And I'm going to dumb this down a lot, but if anybody has 50 minutes to go watch it, it was really interesting. So, first, I need you to know that they make underwater jackhammers, which is crazy. So they showed divers using these to dig into the granite to build these platforms. And then they attached these gigantic tanks to the port side of the ship, the one that was above the water, that they were going to fill with air to act as like giant water wings.
Right.
And then they filled these fabric bags with concrete to make this like concrete mattress for the ship to kind of settle on before it got onto the platforms, because they were trying to do literally everything to keep the ship from breaking apart as they were trying to pull it upright. Lost my place. Oh, and also it had been under the water for almost 2 years. So after they got it pulled upright, they attached the water wings to the other side, and they had to raise the ship deck by deck. And so they were like, they would raise it like one deck, let all the water pour out, and then they would raise it another. So this like whole thing like took, I think, like 2 years or something to build all of this and then get it out of the water.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, okay, when they finally got it raised enough for the tugboats to be able to tow it to Genoa to a dry dock to be dismantled, they had like, hold on, I got off my thing. So they pulled it upright. They attached the water wings to the other side. They had to raise the ship up deck by deck. And then it finally was raised enough that the tugboats were able to tow it to Genoa to a dry dock to be dismantled. But it was pretty impressive. It went off without a hitch. The only issue they really ran into at first was that the ship had kind of like become one with the rock.
Yeah.
And so they had to kind of like pry it off, prise it off of the rocks. But then also where it rested, there was a garden of those endangered mollusks.
Yeah.
So they had to pull all of those guys up and replant them out of the way. Which I guess because they're mollusks, that's kind of easy.
Yeah.
But they had these big nets that I was watching, like the divers, like get these giant things and like stick them into these nets and then take them somewhere else and like plant them back into the seabed. Sadly, because this was such a dangerous operation, one diver did die in the process. I mentioned this a minute ago, but they found the 2 people who had still been missing. There was a woman named Maria Gracia Trecarici, who had been on the cruise celebrating her 50th birthday. And then the waiter that I mentioned.
Yeah.
So as for the ship, she ended up being 144,000 tons of scrap. And that's the story of the Costa Concordia shipwreck disaster.
Well, that's pretty sad.
Yeah.
I mean, luckily most of the people survived, but
yeah,
it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
But it also could have been a lot better if that guy had just been, honest from the start.
Oh, for sure. Hold on, I gotta find a picture of this guy to show you. Because, my goodness, he's like in his Love Boat era. Francesco Schettino. The Love Boat.
It's not exactly what I pictured, but I did picture somebody who thought that they were like suave and debonair.
Oh, for sure. I don't know. It's just crazy. Look, this is what the ship. And then the internet's being slow.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? So, I guess your fears are valid.
Very valid.
And so, if you were maybe considering going on a cruise, maybe you changed your mind now.
Well, luckily I was never considering going on a cruise.
I know. Well, and then Silly Brooke went on a cruise for her honeymoon during hurricane season.
Yeah.
And so then she didn't even get to do any fun things because she was on a ship in, like, the Bahamas or whatever when there was a hurricane. And you can't control that either.
No.
And, like, if you already pay for this thing and you don't have travel insurance, I guess you just stuck going on it.
Just go on your hurricane honeymoon.
I know Hawaii's having all of that terrible flooding, like, disaster that's going on right now. And I saw, I mean, I feel, in my opinion, it was in poor taste, but it was a TikTok of, like, this, I don't know if it was teenager or, like, 20s girl, and her mom had gone to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And they're, like, laying out in their bikinis on, like, lounge chairs in the rain. And, like, the whole point of the video was, like, that they were from San Francisco that was having a heat wave, and it was in, like, the 70s and beautiful weather, and then they were in Hawaii and it was raining. But I was just like, yeah, but people who live there are, like, losing their houses and stuff, so maybe let's focus on, like, the big picture right now.
Yeah.
Sorry your vacation got ruined.
Right.
All right, well, it was nice to see you again.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Perhaps. Remember that you can find us on social media at Twisted and Mysterious. You can email us at twistedandmysteriousPodcast@gmail.com. I guess that's everything.
That's everything. I mean, like, as always, we'd like to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
Maybe we missed you.
Maybe.
Maybe you missed us.
Maybe we were ships passing in the night.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
Well, as always, remember that people are gross and don't get murdered. And don't go on cruises.
No, terrible. Okay, bye.